Welcome one and all here to the Carry First Val ZA Cup. The road to rage finally culminates here at this event where we'll be witnessing the top four teams in the country competing for a grand prize of 150,000 Rand. It could be more, but we'll discuss the details of that in just a second. Remember, y'all, though, we are not hosting this event by ourselves. ACGL might be hosting it, but we are enabled by Predator. We are currently powered by Gizu and connected by Quark through Clear Access. And of course, myself, I'm going to be hard carried by my panel. I'm your host there for the weekend, and I've got some lovely people to help bring us this action, break it all down for me. I've got Daddy Cool, I've got Skara, I've got Tendo, I've got Sam. Y'all were just on camera just a second ago, making another return. Skara, Daddy Cool, what have y'all been up to since you've had a little bit of time today?
I think at this point in time, just kind of preparing for what might be a massive, massive storm, but it's a storm that we've expected, but also excited for. I think it's really something that I really, really look forward to, and just constantly going through just how everything is going to be playing out tomorrow, prepping myself and ensuring that, whatever happens tomorrow, I leave it all out there. And I think now it's just kind of just getting into that mindset that, we're actually here. This is the event. We're finally here. We're finally at Rage. And now it's it's the real feeling to be wow, it's actually finally settling in, and now it's all about preparing and ensuring that we make the best out of all of this. So I really, really hope that I'm probably prepared. I think that's the biggest thing. Even I was literally running up and down this morning, making sure I need my notes. I need to make sure I'm prepared for this. I need to make sure that this is venture building. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me now, is just ensuring that I make this the best event possible, not only for me, but for everyone watching, for the entire Valorant community, and also just for the scene in general, because I think we all understand the magnitude of this event and how important it is and how well we want it to do. So I think ensuring just focus on all of that.
Speaking of the magnitude of this event, it's a pretty big one, right? Just a reminder for y'all, those of you who don't know, not only have we already put up 150K, no matter what, 150,000 Rand will be on the line, 75 of it going to the winning team. But we do have a couple of additional community goals. Y'all can actually help us out to pad the pockets of the players participating this weekend. If we do manage to get ourselves to 20 million impressions on social media, we're at about 16 right now, so not that far away, then all of a sudden, we get to boost up this prize pool to 175K. And of course, that requires 300 viewers on our streams. But right now, looking at this money, Daddy Cool, one of the cool things about it is that no matter what, as a player, you're going home with something. You're not stressed about going home broke this weekend.
Like Scar's already alluded to, is the magnitude is massive. All these players are excited. It's the biggest tournament we've had for Valorant, and since its launch, but obviously with the service being here, it's just amazing. So these players, they're going to be playing to their fullest content. And what I've been busy with, Snare, is I've been going to players and teams, and I'm a bit of a chaotic, neutral type of person. So I've been stirring a bit, and finding out the storyline. So I've been talking to the players, talking to the team's captains, finding out what they expect, what they want to do. And I can tell you one thing, these players are here to give it their all. Two teams in particular, they both won first place, and that's not possible. So I think we're in for some action over this weekend. It's going to be awesome.
It really is going to be an action-packed weekend. Personally, I love the format because double elimination gives people the best chance to not only prepare, but bounce back from setbacks. And that does mean that tomorrow is not an elimination day. But if you look at the schedule, Sam, Nauri, this is insane. Just looking at the roster of teams assembled before us, right? The kind of players that are coming into this. It must be really scary if you're one of the newer players, right? Being like, damn, I have to face all these giants before I can even consider lifting the trophy.
I think that's something that really plays into this really well for the teams, is that a lot of them have quite a bit of competitive experience in the past, in other games or whatever. But I look at someone like Sky. Sky's only 17. He's the youngest player at this LAN. It's his first LAN, and it's the biggest one that South Africa has ever had. So there's a lot of pressure just in that regard. I think for some of the more seasoned veteran teams, it's about maintaining that calm and staying cool and collected the way that they have in the past. But for newer players playing in front of a crowd, playing with casters right there in front of you, playing with your team sitting just a few meters away from you, it can be very, very stressful. So I'm hoping that things aren't going to get into their heads too much, especially because we start with best of ones. And best of ones are, they're like pistol rounds. I mean, they're very 50-50. They can go either way. But as you said, that double elimination, that lower bracket, there is a safety net. And I'm kind of hoping for the best of one upsets. I think that would be
Ooh.
dope.
There's a lot of good best of ones. Omnius Gaming start off against Nixa, obviously, at the beginning of the day. GG take on Leviosa. Some of you may know Goliath Gaming as Soxa, but very recently they were bought out by Gaiman, basically like yesterday. And then we get to the good stuff. The lower bracket final and the winner bracket final. Both of them being best of threes. Lots of action to come on the Saturday. But Tendo, let's focus firstly, right, on one thing. We were talking about these players, their preparation, how they're going to get themselves into this level, right? What do you think is going through a lot of these players' minds right now when they know that in 2 days it's do or die, right? In a very new environment, in a big tournament like this. But crucially, the thing I want you to talk about is how much support can all of these players expect from the various organizations to ensure they don't crumble under these conditions?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting, especially if you've looked at just the trajectory of Val ZA, since its inception, that hashtag, it started quite some time ago, even before, the carry first came into it. And it's just been developmental. And if you've been a part of the scene, you'll know that it's quite, tight, and there's a lot of people, there's a large support system. And I think now for a lot of these players, I'm thinking about, especially like Nixa and Goliath, right, who have kind of been the pinnacle, the top two teams in the country for quite some time. They are finally getting this opportunity to be at this massive stage, something that you can look internationally even and compare. And they have this opportunity now to really show, their friends, their family, their parents that, hey guys, look, just come to Rage real quick. I'm going to be playing, and there's a lot of money on the line as well, right? This is something that I've been passionate about, and I hope you guys can come share this passion just by supporting. And it goes very far. It's a retweet here or there. It's a like on a post, For example, even like you said, Socks Up just became Goliath. It's that belief, seeing that a seasoned organization like Goliath Gaming, who's been in South African esports since forever, can finally see the value that Valorant has, and just the value that is coming out of an event like this, that they need to make sure they're on board. And, I'm pretty close with a lot of the Goliath guys, and I know, they'll be taking care of these guys as much as they can. And you can see, if you're talking to the players right now from GG, they're excited, they're happy, they got their new kit on. They're like, yeah, man, that's my name at the back of that shirt. And I think it's just overall pretty exciting to just be in this kind of situation.
Well, let's start looking towards the actual teams, the competition that we are here to witness, right? So, Daddy Cool, we have Nixa versus Omnius Gaming to kick things off. Nixa is the top seed coming into this tournament, right? And, we've done things a little bit differently for the Carry First Val ZA Cup. Instead of having a year-long situation which culminates here at Rage, it's sort of been like, rushed is the wrong word, but it happened flash in the pan. Couple of months in, you have to prove you're the best. You have to be at your pinnacle immediately. Talk to me about this, Daddy Cool. Will the Nixa that showed up rinsing through the qualifiers, will they be able to do so again tomorrow?
Well, I just want to say, I know it's been a flash in the pan, but we only got our servers in August, and the fact that this awesome event has happened in such a short amount of time, it's so great. Thank you, Gary, first for making that possible. But yeah, no, Nixa is definitely a team to be looking at. They have players here. I've got my notes. Thui was one of the first, the first South African to get Radiant. On high ping, mind you.
It was like 150 ping, right?
Yeah, I think the tweet said 150. I don't know how he got 150, but I get 180. He's got that. He's probably got clear access for. Anyway, but yeah, no, these players. I mean, we asked some questions here, but the first game being against OG, right? OG's mission for this weekend is to cause upsets, and like Sam was alluding to, best of ones is upset kingdom. So that might bode both badly or good for Nixa, but they, as a team, they look really, really strong. They've been together for a long time. They have star individual players. So I think I'm Team Nixa for the weekend. I'm just saying. I'm putting it out there.
Hashtag no bias.
No bias. There's no such thing as cast bias. But yeah, no. So I think I think what they're going to bring to the show is a lot of things that we as the average Valorant player aren't used to seeing here in South Africa. I think they really are one of the teams that have figured a lot of stuff out on the competitive level, and I can't wait to see them on action tomorrow, especially game one. I think we're in for a treat.
That BO1 is going to be very scary, especially up against Omnius Gaming. So, Skara, the thing that's interesting for me is that you have a squad like Nixer, right? They have the pedigree of all of these players, but they also have that organizational name. And honestly, winning becomes a habit for certain orgs, right? There's a reason why for years on end, we've seen Nixer dominating FPSs, Goliaths are up there. When you had the big rivalry between Energy and Bravado for years on end, it was always there. You've had your White Rabbits come into this. If you're an Omnius Gaming, right? Are you getting a bit of a debuff having to go up against this organization, or are you getting that, don't take us easily, guys? This is a bit of a revenge tour happening. What can we expect from Omnius in that regard?
I think, especially when you look at Omnius, people will think, oh, they might not be the ones to look out for. But I don't think that should be the case, because people forget that Omnius has been around since the beta, right? They've been a team since the beta of Valorant. So they have 3 core members that have been a part of that roster, which is Noob Muncher, Demonics, and that is going to be Tai, I believe. So the fact that they have 3 core members already, they've built up sort of synergy over time. And I think there's one thing that they have going into this, and that's longevity. You know, sometimes it's really important to keep into consideration that sometimes that can play a factor into things. You know, these players understand each other very, very well. And I think one thing that Nixer don't have that Omnius has is, again, that longevity, because Nixer just formed recently. Although these players have played together in the past before, I mean, there has been the Dynasty roster of ATK, which was one of the best rosters we had ever seen locally. But at that time, still, Omnius was a part of the top teams competing alongside them, even when they went under Nixer. So I feel like just because they're not maybe considered, you know, top 2, I don't think you should consider, it might be an easy wash for them. It might be a little rollover, because I mean, for them, their goal is not really to gun for top spot. For them, they understand that might not be the case, and literally for the mere fact that they said they want to come in here and they want to cause upsets, I feel like they have a lot more determination in them to prove that we can hang with the big dogs. We can actually go toe-to-toe with the rest of these other players. So I think that's also something we need to think about, is that just because they might not be considered at the top, they also still have that determination. They still have that longevity. They still have experience together as a team. So it's very important to sort of keep that in mind. Even though they might not be, again, on the same level as Nixer, again, anything can happen in a best of one. Really, anything can happen. And we all understand that all too well. So I think that's something that I might have faith in Omnius for, is that they have that determination, and I do believe that they have it in them to potentially take that map off of Nixer, because it's not like they are invincible.
That's
Nixer
true.
have had maps taken off of them. So it's not like they're unbeatable, and if you're Omnius, you have done your homework, you have done your research, and you're finding out the best possible way and best possible angle for you to obviously get an upper hand.
I mean, they are here to cause upsets. They're here to make madness happen. I think one of the other things, Daddy, is that when madness does happen, when the game is chaotic, a team that is expected to win normally has the harder time recovering, because you have to overcome the mental hurdle of being the favorite and having to deal with that challenge at the same time. So the other team, though, that I really want to focus on, as much as Nixer and Omnis is going to be fun, it's going to be very fun. Sam, Nauri, listen, Leviosa. Now, this is not necessarily a team. Anybody would be lying to me if they said they came into this tournament assuming Leviosa is going to be the team that wins, right? However, some of their players in that squad who've played in other FPS esports in South Africa before sort of had a career of being the people that would upset other guys. They would make it very difficult for you to progress through tournaments. So talk to me about this Leviosa squad. What do you expect they'll be doing, and how should they be preparing for the matchup against GG?
So one big caveat I think that we need to remember about Leviosa and Omnius is that they didn't qualify through the group stage. Unfortunately, we had No Fear and we had Espionage, but they are from Reunion. Visa issues abound. It happens. Leviosa was then bumped up as the next team. They came like 5th, so they got bumped up, and Omnius had to play through a last chance qualifier.
Yeah.
So these two teams really did still have to prove themselves, but they weren't the teams that were expected to be here. And I love the storyline of Leviosa because they're not a team that's been grinding Valorant since beta. They're not the Omniuses. They're not the Socks Ups, right? Or even the Nixes. They are a group of guys that played a different FPS that decided South African servers, really, really big tournament, lots of money on the line. Let's give it a shot. You know, we can click heads. Let's see how we do. And so for them to have made it here is really exciting, I think. But there are a lot of question marks, a lot of kind of caveats on that roster. Like, how are they going to do? There's relatively low expectations, I think, on them. Not because they're bad players, but again, because they're relatively unknown. Especially if you kind of hard focus in on the Valorant scene, you might not know these names as well as people who come from other games, right? So I think that there's an immense amount of pressure on them for that, but at the same time, there's no pressure because when no one's really expecting anything, you just play your game, and when you surprise everyone, then hey. But if you don't, then well, whatever. Nobody thought anything of it. So that's a pretty cool one. Coming up against a team like Goliath, they do have one very clear advantage. Bearing in mind that Goliath, who were Socks Up, have competed a lot in tournaments. Yes, they've competed internationally. Some of the players, they've got a lot of that experience that they bring forward, but they've competed a lot. There's a lot of tape. There's a lot of like material to troll through, to research through. You can have a really good idea of what these teams are capable of. Whereas you come into this, and sure, I mean, these guys, they've scrimmed together in the past. They've probably played, CS together or whatever. So there is a little bit of familiarity there, but it's a very different ball game. And from what I understand from talking with some of the players today, Leviosa have not been slouching. When they realized that they had made it to Rage, they accelerated on the scrim time. They've really, really been putting in the hours. So this is not a team that you just write off. This is a team that you go dark horse. Like Omnius underdog, Leviosa dark horse.
Well, we have Omnius as an underdog, Leviosa as a dark horse. We have maybe the number 1 seed in Nixa, right? But I think the number 1 contender, Tendo, it has to be Goliath. Socks Up. There's a lot of players I've been speaking to who, from their expectation, they were surprised by 2 things. Firstly, that Socks Up wasn't number 1 seed overall. And they're surprised that no one is regarding them as the favorites. So having spent some time in the GG camp, hard at the boys, having done the research, the prep, what's your feeling about this gaming squad? How far can Goliath go?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting statement because I think that's kind of been the sort of idea a lot of the time, and I think that's just shadowed because of the Nixa core roster, Kang, Cloak C3. When you hear those names, it kind of invokes some sort of fear into a lot of people, right? But guys, when we're talking about like Mangalorean, for example, Robobo, these are really seasoned players. Like Sam said, they've been on the grind over and over and over again. And actually, I think the most recent Valorant tournament that we can regard as a major stop along the way over here, right? It was the Socks Up roster that ended up winning that tournament, right?
Yep.
Right, against the X80K. And I mean, at the time, a lot of people would always just be like, "Oh yeah, 80K win, 80K win." It's so simple, but they always overlooked Goliath. They always overlooked, Socks Up, and they just been a team that sticks together and they just create synergy. And I think at the end of the day, something about being a team is about having that brothership, that camaraderie as well, understanding how someone's emotions work when they're in this kind of situation, how you can pull them up from being in down, spirits, etc., etc. So for me, I really don't know if it's really such an easy road for our number 1 seed, right? That's the thing. I really think it's going to depend on a lot of factors. It's also the LAN experience, the Nixa LAN experience, it's not really as high as it could be. But the Goliath LAN experience is really up there, right? And they've got some new flavor in there in Goliath. I'm really looking at Travis. He's going to be quite interesting. He's got a lot of competitive experience. And that's the kind of person, when you talk to him, you can kind of just see fire in his eyes. And that can be really dangerous, to an overconfident team that isn't expecting somebody that came from a game, let's not mention the X game, to really be a contender in something so tactical and methodical as Valorant. So there's the sort of X factor as well. You know, we're going to talk about the org buff as well. I think there's a lot of things going on for Goliath. And I think it would be a monumental for them to lift that trophy up on Sunday.
Sunday, right around the corner. What do you think, Sarah, about this?
Yeah, no, I mean, Goliath is not really my team that I've been researching, but I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one where people don't really rate them enough. Like, sorry about that. People don't rate them enough for what they've done because at some point, for people that don't know, ATK was undefeated for almost 2 years. They went undefeated for 2 years, and the team that actually defeated them, took them down, was Soxa. So the mere fact that they've done so much, they were the first team to beat ATK, they've gone overseas, they've had the experience. I mean, they're a team that needs to be considered. There needs to be a team that, you know, they are contenders. Because a lot of the time I feel like people, they kind of overlook them. You know, a lot of the time, as you said, it was always ATK win. You know, we already know the script, we understand how things are going to go. But at the same time, Soxa have just been in the background. They've been lurking, they've been in the shadows, and they've been proving us wrong time and time again. And I think it's high time that we kind of take a bit of notice to that.
Well, I guess the consensus is there's no easy matchups. Great, wonderful. Gonna be a fun weekend.
I mean, it's the top four, right? We started with over 60 teams. It's been waddled down to the top four. So I wouldn't expect any team to be a team that you could just write off. And I think getting to LAN, it's, you know, you've been at LAN as well. We've all been at LAN competing and everything. The mindset is so different. The stage is so different. You have the jitters. We have new players. Funny enough, first game, the youngest player here versus the oldest player here. I'm sorry, Mr. Demonic, to throw you under the bus. But, I mean, there's value in that, right? That experience of being a team that's played together for a long time and has been to these events and had the crowds. They've heard the physical stage shivering when the crowd goes wild. That affects how you play in your game. And I think that's something that's going to definitely show in this weekend. And that's going to be, I think it's going to be a massive determining factor in how these teams play and how we're going to see hopefully upsets. Everybody here is looking for upsets, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, yo, I want to see an upset. And nobody wants a 3-0 in the grand final. We want that 3-1, 3-2 overtime. And I have a feeling that that's what we're going to be seeing. Definitely. So I'm excited.
I'm excited. I'm hyped. So let's get into some of this nitty gritty as well here. So Sam, tell me about when you look at Leviosa, what do you think is in terms of gameplay, the core strength that they bring to the table that relative to the rest of the field here at the tournament?
So from chatting to a lot of people and just like some common sense, that raw mechanical ability that comes with having played FPS games for years. They can rush a site, click heads, win out 1v1s. And I was saying to a lot of these guys, like, what do? You know, you don't want to isolate a 1v1 because you might lose it. So what's the plan? And a lot of them have, I'm not gonna leak the strats, but they all said something very similar. So there is an idea of how they want to deal with this, but nothing is set in stone until the day, right? Nothing is 100% until you actually load into the server. So for a team like Leviosa, who come into this as relative unknowns, who come into this with a lot of mechanical skill, maybe less so on the macro level, but on the micro level, it is fantastic. They need to lean on those strengths. We're probably going to see a lot of really aggressive plays from them, one player in particular, but I'm not going to out him.
I know.
I know that, like, you know, chatting to a lot of the teams, and I said to them, how do you define your play style? And they go, we think we're really balanced and really reactive and really like, we'll see what the other team's doing and then we'll respond and deal with it. Leviosa, I think, are going to be very aggressive. I think they're going to try and take space very early. And I think that that's a real double-edged sword because that puts you in a situation for a 5v5 retake. And in a 5v5 retake, once you have planted Spike, you are now in the disadvantageous position. So it definitely needs to be kind of measured and metered a little bit, but definitely there's going to be some explosive plays from this roster.
Okay. Tendo, when you look at this game in, I want to keep saying, start to think game in. I keep wanting to say game in Goliath, but that doesn't make sense. So you look at Goliath Gaming's roster, how they've been playing as a squad, right, as Sox Up. What do you think stands out about what they do? And what do you think that they need to focus on the most to give themselves the best chance of winning this tournament that they weren't able to do beforehand?
Yeah, I think at least when we're coming into that opening match against Leviosa, it's gonna have to be some sort of a balance between showing everything and also just hiding enough, right? Because I, when we look at Leviosa, yes, they're coming into this as the least experienced team, right? And as Goliath, what's going to be their strength is knowing that they have experience and they have a little bit more in their playbook than Leviosa would have, right? So for Goliath, what it's going to have to be is just touching the bare minimum of their playbook, right? It's going to have to be almost the most simplest strats that they're going to have to pull out, but the more well-practiced strats at the same time, right? I think that's where their advantage lies in. They've got, a good leadership with Robobo as well. You know, he's really a calm, cool, collected leader. And then, of course, you have like Mango, who's also going to just be there, helping the team, calling out as well. So it's just a lot of brains. And I think that was something that when we used to contrast with like Nixa, for example, I think a lot of people thought like Nixa isn't really the brainy team, right? They kind of they know Valorant, they know how to play Valorant in a professional way and in a professional level, but they used to just be insane aimers, right? You know, back with X80K, everyone used to just shout for Caps because Caps used to just hit shots, incredible shots. But one thing I always notice about Goliath is that it's very mental. They have a very mental game. They have a lot of brains around them, which I think is going to be quite interesting, honestly, man. A player that's really underrated for me is also Two-Face on that team, guys. He's so good as well in just creating, opportunities for the team in that initiator role. So it's just the brains around the team that I think is really going to be their biggest advantage.
Okay. One of the things I was looking into, Daddy Cool, when looking at how Nixa play, it's of the teams that are assailed here, right? As Tendo was mentioning, they tend to do what works for them, right? One thing I found very interesting, when you look at the agents that they've been selecting throughout the course of their run up until here, right? Has anything stood out that you felt, that's a bit strange, And maybe they might pull that out as a pocket pick at some point in the weekend.
I mean, so the youngest player here at LAN, Sky, the motto that Nixa has is Sky Go Kill. But his agent is Phoenix, which is, if you ask most people in the Valorant scene, is a bit of a, it's not that highly picked, it's not as effective. But if you're comfortable on your agent, that's much more valuable than like almost anything else, right? If you know your agent's ins and outs, that's a force to be reckoned with. So I feel that Phoenix is still a bit weird. But if you make it work, if you are comfortable with it, it's and this again, being here way in an uncomfortable place and not in your comfort zone at home, in your boxes, you have to be professional. I think that form of comfort is a place that you can play off of and just back yourself to be who you are online, being that same person here at LAN. And I think that's something we can expect from them, hopefully. But I must say, overall, they have Fade as well as one of the initiators. And I'm not too big a fan of Fade as an initiator. Obviously, she has a great kit. But I think, again, it's about that comfort, knowing what's good. And the good news here as well is Sky was nerfed in the last patch, like on Monday, but we're not playing on that patch. Yeah. So thank goodness for...
They are max strength. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I mean, I guess we could ask ACGL if players are allowed to take off their pants, chill in their boxes. We'll make a plan. Big Scara. So one of the things that's going to be playing a very big role in this tournament, right, is going to be map selection. So I want to ask you two things. Firstly, which team do you think has the best practice across all the maps, as in they are more reliably, no matter what the map selection is going to be, they're the ones who come out on top? And secondly, how big of a difference does it make at high level Valve, the map selection, or rather who gets to pick the map first?
I think people really do overlook just how important it can be, because when you're playing your day-to-day ranked game, it's very simple. You just overlook it. You get, you got Fracture. Oh, you got Sunset. Oh, you got Ascent. It's like, okay, just pick whatever works for me, or pick whatever, or fill, But this is high-level Valorant. This is where every single detail matters. The initiator you pick matters on the map that you're on. The controllers you pick are very, very vital. The sentinels you pick. I mean, for example, if you're playing a map like Haven, that's a 3-sided map, right? you don't want a sentinel that can't hold down sites on their own. You don't want to have a chamber that has just one trip. You know, you want to have a cipher, you want to have a killjoy that can lock down a site on their own, and two other players obviously holding the various sites as well. So it is so meticulous and how important every single detail is that a lot more comes to the game. Your agents is so important. How you push onto a site is very important because now different angles are being held. Now sometimes teams aren't as aggressive. They wait for you, they suck you in onto the site, and they catch you off guard. So it's little details that come into play that really can actually either win or lose you a game. So that's really why that separates sort of your casual game or your casual ranked game from an actual competitive tournament or tournament game, is that there's a whole lot more thought process that goes behind things. You know, from a ranked perspective, you know, when you're playing with a team that you've randomly been put together with, every round, you don't actually have a plan. It's just like, whatever happens on the round or whatever happened, okay, cool, we'll do whatever. You know, teams actually have strats. Okay, we're 5 rounds up, or we're not 5 rounds up. Let's try do this, let's try do that. Oh, let's go for this strat, let's go for that strat. You know, there's little details that go into the game that are planned ahead of time for teams to actually be properly prepared. And that's why there's actually such an importance also for being able to, you know, pick your maps first. You know, that is so important because you may have practiced Haven and the first instaban is Haven. That's out the window.
Yeah.
You know, you may have practiced Sunset. That's the second map that's banned. That's out the window. Now what do you do when the team has picked a map that is your weakest, and then on top of that you may potentially only have one map that you're actually strong on? Or maybe all the maps that you're strong on are gone. So being able to even have the luxury of picking first can also dictate a game in a massive way, because the team that essentially picks that can essentially dictate how the game goes. They can dictate whether we can either easily 3-0 this, or we can easily clean sweep this, or we might potentially take it all the way depending on how the map selection has gone. But at the same time, that's why, you know, teams don't always leave what their insta-ban is, because they'll be, okay, cool, let's practice this map. Let's go for that. You know, let's try catch them out. So there's a lot of importance for those types of picks. And I feel at this point in time, you know, obviously we'll be looking at next up, we're looking at Goliath. But I think I might potentially be leaning to the side of Goliath, who might be the ones to have a really good map selection. I feel like their game is just above and beyond. And what I mean by that is that these guys go on a round by round analysis. You know, these guys are constantly looking for ways to better themselves or looking for, you know, an edge on the team that they're playing. And one thing I love about them is they're not a team of hotheads. Everyone is calm. And at the same time, that's what you need in these types of scenarios and situations. So I feel like for them, they might actually potentially have that advantage going in, because in as much as they have dropped maps, I still feel that they really could be a team to either take it all the way or show us that that international experience that they're getting really is not just for show. You know, they really can show that they are the best team around. So I genuinely believe that they might have a really good selection. And on top of that, even in their games as well, you can see by some of the scorelines that reflect, you know, they really can also control the game. So I do believe that they potentially have that advantage, and I'm really, really excited to see how things do play. And I think that's the one standout team that I also want to see the most, purely because of their history as a team, their experience as a team, and all around, you know, them under a new banner, how they perform like that. So there's just so much going into this that I'm really, really excited about.
Congratulations, Tendo. You've converted Skara here. We've got 2 acolytes for the GG side. And, you know, having 5 players in a team that are calm, never in my life. Could never be me. Definitely not Dota players. That does not happen. Sam, you know, Skara was just mentioning now, Nari, how important map selection is, right? And how big of a deal it does. Here in this tournament, we're not only going to be having map selection factor into how the best of 3s play out, but once we get to the winner bracket final, whoever wins the winner bracket final will enter the grand final with the advantage. You know, some Valorant tournaments will give you a map advantage. Maybe you have a bit of additional time. What we're doing here at Carry First Val ZA Cup is that the winner bracket team gets to start with 2 bans and they get the first pick. This advantage to me, Sam, I'll be honest, seemed a bit crazy. What's happening?
So this is actually the international standard. This is how all, you know, main Riot Valorant tournaments go. And I was actually chatting again with some of the players earlier, and they said, yeah, we prefer this. Because just coming through the upper bracket and then having a full map advantage, you've essentially potentially turned a best of 5 into a best of 3.
Yeah.
Because that team only needs to win 2 maps. And, like, that's not fun. That's not, like, super competitive. It sucks. But I will say that it is still a massive advantage because, and to make this even more clear for people, there are only 7 maps in the entire competitive map pool. So what that means is that with the winner bracket advantage, you have determined which 5 maps you will be playing. You don't know the order that they're going to be played in, but you decide what those maps are going to be. You have essentially like gamed the system, and you are now able to make sure that every single map that's played is a map that you want to play. That is a big advantage. And then, so you get to those. Ooh, you get to ban out those first 2 maps. Then you get to pick the first map. Now, I don't think that that's as big of a deal because again, you've already determined what the 5 maps are going to be. So whether you play it first or not, you've got to play it. Sure, there's something to be said for getting it done early, specific maps, or leaving maps that a team might be uncomfortable on towards the end, particularly because the team that comes in from the lower bracket will already have played a best of 3 by the time we get to the best of 5. So that is potentially 8 maps that they might have to play through. And so that makes things really, really difficult for the team that comes through the lower bracket. So now you're tired, and the team that you're playing up against, the team that's come through the winner bracket is like, we're gonna pick Sunset. You've just played 3 maps. Your 4th map is gonna be Sunset. Like, what do you say to that? You can't say anything. So in terms of like the mental game, there's definitely an advantage there. But I think it is the preferred way of running the upper brackets.
Yeah. Coming from the Dota world, all the esports I play, we do it fair. Winner bracket advantage is just you're second now, buddy. You gotta demonstrate that you're still good enough. But one thing that I do like about having the system here, Tendo, is that it gives you an advantage for being hot from the jump, right? Over the course of a 2-day tournament, if this was like a week-long tournament, I would feel, maybe we can do something different, give teams time to build momentum. But now you're really incentivized to arrive tomorrow hot. Hell, here at ACGL, we gave them today off. We're just talking here to allow them time to prepare, so no one can come tomorrow with excuses for any reason. But that also means, Tendo, there's a lot of pressure because let's say the first round you play, you're finding yourself not feeling it immediately. There's not that much time to recover and try to find a way back into a winning position.
Yeah, it's quite difficult, honestly. Especially what Sam mentioned about the team coming from the lower bracket final would have had to have played a best of 3 already. I always find that a bit of an advantage sometimes, though, right? Because you kind of enter the day warmed up, right? If you won that game, you have some momentum behind your back. You guys have already prepared yourself. Whoever's in that winner bracket, right, and wins it with that map advantage, yes, sure, you've laid out the carpet. We know exactly how things are going to go, etc., etc. But you guys are going to be playing your first game in that first map, right? And even though you might have that advantage that you picked the first map, again, when you come from that lower bracket, you would have been warm already. You would have, had your communication already sorted out if you had any problems. And like you said, we're resting today so that tomorrow when we get in, it's just guns blazing. It's already hit. And I think obviously the game at the very end of the day, the winners bracket, leading in for the grand final is going to be probably the most important, obviously. And it's a good thing that all the teams are going to have at least one map, to warm up, to make sure they get a feel of the stage, and that kind of thing, because it's really critical for being comfortable on LAN. I think that's what makes it quite a hard thing. When you play at home, it's so simple. I mean, you're used to that. It's like riding a bicycle. But the moment you get onto LAN, it's all of a sudden a motorcycle. There's people screaming in your ear, etc., etc. So I think sometimes it's nice to get as many revs as you can on the stage before you get into those high pressure situations.
Yeah.
Because it just, I think makes it a little bit more comfortable for you and your teammates once you guys really understand what you're working with.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Understanding what you're working with, making sure you're also fully prepared is an essential part of being able to succeed in a tournament like this. One thing that is also very important, which we heard being alluded to earlier by Tendo and Nauri, fatigue. Unfortunately, the team that finds up on Sunday being able to take the long road through the lower bracket, they'll have to play 8 games potentially if they're able to do so. And even tomorrow, if you're playing in the winner bracket, you arrive, you play at 10. You have to play again later on in the day, 3:30, 4, 5, who even knows. Daddy cool. You've seen a lot of lands, not just within Valorant, but across different esports, right? How much does fatigue play a role in the team that ends up eventually lifting the trophy?
Yo, I've personally experienced as well. It's one of those things that once again separates the pros from the champions. It's something that's a fact of life in esports, and it's something you have to be prepared for. And it is something that usually comes with time and expertise and experience. But at the same time, the young team, they still have that kick and energy in them, you know? So
Don't need coffee.
yeah, it kind of equates out. So yeah, and I think that kind of feeds into the overall meta game when you're at this level of Valorant. It's not just about your gun skill, because everybody can click heads here. We've heard everybody say, yeah, these players can click heads. They've played a lot of FPS titles. I mean, Valorant's a relatively new FPS title as a whole. And that's where it's part of the whole meta game with these tournaments, with map bans, kind of playing your enemy, figuring them out and knowing what to do against them, kind of trying to tilt them, you know. There's always a bit of banter in between happening. So I think fatigue plays a massive role in that aspect of esports, and it's what makes it so interesting as well. But there's an advantage again. Sitting on your PC, you're fresh in your settings, or you're sitting comfortably. Once again, comfort important. But if you're in the zone and you have that momentum, that snowball momentum, it can be unstoppable. And if you're a team that, you might be winners bracket, but you're now sitting just watching, you might be sitting there getting nervous because you're seeing what this other team is capable of. And that's a different part of stress. So yeah, they might be fatigued, but you're coming in and being like, okay, we just saw what they're capable of. We need to deal with this. So I think fatigue plays a role, but it's a one part in the cog of the machine. And only time will tell. Again, these teams are all here, these players. We've seen the names across multiple years. I don't think anybody is going to let fatigue really slow them down that much.
That is true. I mean, probably these are players who are practicing 10, 12 hours every other day. So at this point in time, you can't be tired. And of course, these are degenerate gamers. Cannot expect them to want to deal with good energy. So one of the things that is interesting about this event, we've all alluded to how it's the biggest one we're having in South African shores. We have the biggest teams, the biggest prize pool. Everything is pretty resplendent in terms of how we're hosting the event. But Valorant, especially for South Africa, with the new servers being introduced, is a relatively new game. Obviously, the game has existed this entire time, but the pickup in our region hasn't necessarily been where it possibly should be. So, Sam, Naori, you played a lot of FPSs, right? You've played in teams, you've done these events, you've done the games. Talk to us about this. What is it about Valorant that allows us to differentiate it and make it special relative to all the other shooters in the market?
Oh, so I spoke about this a little bit during our previous panel and about why I love Valorant so much. And it really is, it's this beautiful brainchild between the hero shooters genre and your more kind of typical tactical FPS. So you have that heavy reliance on macro play, on mechanical skill, on being able to hit your shots, on knowing when to rotate, on knowing how to communicate with one another, how to take space, how to give space, how to reclaim space. There's so much of that comes from the attack FPS genre. But then you add in the abilities to that as well. And I think about other, the really famous hero shooter that everyone knows about. And there was a big scene for that in South Africa as well. There was a lot of people playing that game. And it slowly kind of died off. So when Valorant came out, and it was this beautiful brainchild between these two types of game that just worked, it drew in so many people. Because, yes, you still have the baseline utility, right? Smokes, flashes, Molotovs. You've got those. That's a big part of it. But now you've added in so much more to that. There are new dynamics. There are walls. There are walls that turn. There are walls that damage you. There are walls that concuss you. There are concussions, which is not a thing that you get terribly often. And so there's so much more that you have to work with. And different flashes on different agents work in different ways. They have different, some of them hit a skybox, some of them just go on forever. Some of them, flash around a corner. Some of them you can like send off on a flanking mission to the other side of the map. So there are different ways that the different utility works. So there's so much more brain power going into each thing. And that's the other thing with maps where Scar was talking about the importance of it, because your composition becomes such an important part of it. There is not one comp that will work on every single map to the absolute best way imaginable. There will be tweaks. There will be things that change. And even if you are running the same comp on two different maps, the way you run that comp is different. Like, Valorant is such a dynamic game. And I think that is one of the things that makes it so appealing to so many people. And unfortunately, we did have a drop-off of players right at the start because people were getting so frustrated with the ping. Because like other hero shooters where there is a little bit of forgiveness with it, on attack FPS, there is no forgiveness. You need low ping to succeed. So now with the low servers, we're seeing those people come back. We're seeing new people come in. And it's really, really exciting for the future of Valorant in our scene. I think that this is the start of something really phenomenal.
Platinum player Scara. So one of the things that is always very intriguing about games like this, right, is you mentioned earlier about how people play ranked versus how they play in a competitive scenario, right? Obviously, there's a lot to do with having a team around you, having the correct composition of people from a mental standpoint. But individually, what do you think it is that separates, let's say, a high skill pub player from somebody who's on the cusp of entering into the competitive scene?
I mean, there's a lot of aspects to it as well. There's also, I think the biggest thing is discipline. You need to be disciplined enough to be able to be a part of a team. Because when you're playing for a team, it's a whole different dynamic than playing in a ranked game. We've all experienced, we've had toxic teammates, but at the same time, we just work with them. We try to get the game done. But when we get to a point where you now part of a professional team, there's no such thing as you want to flame your teammate for missing one shot, right?
If he misses 2 shots, maybe, but missing one, yeah, definitely.
So it's like, now you're blaming your teammates for missing a shot, or, you're insulting your teammate. There's no room for that. You need discipline. You need to be able to work in an environment where you're able to cooperate with other people. Because 9 times out of 10, you're going to be stuck with these people for a while. So you need to be able to work with people, be able to be someone that takes criticism, takes that on the chin, learns how to improve, and you go into the workshop and you keep working. And that's why you can have players that are phenomenal at what they do. They're some of the best players, but they're just sitting on the shelf doing nothing. And it's not because they can't join a team. It's because they can't be a part of one. That's the biggest thing, is that if you're able to have the discipline of working in a team, learning how to take criticism, learning how to work and grow with that team, then you're not really going to go far. You can be the most skilled player in the world. You can have all the mechanics, you can have all the brain matter. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to work with people, where are you going to take a career? How are you going to get into the scene? How are you going to get into a team? So I think that's the biggest thing. There's other facts, but I think that's the main thing that players need to focus on is their discipline, being respectful, respecting organizations, respecting players, respecting people around them, because you never know who you'll end up with down the line. The same person that you're flaming in that ranked lobby might be a person that you see playing on stage.
Yeah.
The same person that you're saying, is not doing good enough, or they're not pulling their weight, might be pulling their weight and winning 75,000 Rand on the stage. So it's little things like that are so vital and important for players. And I think that's why some players sometimes tend to struggle. But you might be extremely talented, but if you don't have discipline, if you don't know how to work with people, properly interact with people, then I think it's very, very difficult for you to make it on a much bigger stage as well.
I've lost on stage to somebody I've talked trash to just before the event, so I get it. Don't do it, y'all. Never do that. But he raises a very good point, so that getting that discipline out. So for me, Daddy, it's difficult for 2 reasons, right? Firstly, if you think about the general profile of the type of person who's going to get good at a game, right? Before you join a team or anything, you're just focused on you. You're sort of tunnel vision, right? Just doing yourself. And there's a lot of teenagers, fam. Not necessarily the stage in your life where you're the most open to embracing other people, the most tolerant of new ideas, the most able to take criticism on the chin. So, how do you wrangle this group of phenomenally talented kids into a cohesive unit without breaking their spirits in the process?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Hey, we can sit here for days. I mean, no, but that's genuinely a good question. And Skara touched on a lot of the important points, and I think the one thing that rings true is there really is no I in team. And yeah, like you say, you're focusing on you watching YouTube videos, you're spending hours in aim labs, you want to be the best player that you can be. And we've all been in a game where we get 30 kills, but we still lose because our team didn't contribute. But sometimes you have to realize, like, yes, you got 30 kills, but how did you enable your team? I feel that sometimes we've seen players go single digits in kills, but they have more impact in winning a game than the person who got 30 kills. And we've all experienced that as well. And they don't always get the credit. And yeah, it comes down to experience. Like you say, wrangling these teenagers, whew, it's a tough one. But I think, and this is for the future of esports, the sooner we get players at a younger age into the competitive gaming scene, it's so important. Even playing other traditional sports as well, you learn to be part of a team. It's so important. I think gaming in the past was a lot of you usually weren't at sports. You didn't play sports. You only did games. But we're heading into a future now where you both do sports and gaming. Gaming isn't a thing that you just do on your own anymore. It's something you do with your friends. That's how I spend most of my time with my friends. I think most people here as well. That's how I see my time with my friends, and I love how that's evolved in gaming over the years. So as we go through, ACGL is running school leagues as well, so they are introducing these players at young ages, and they're learning these valuable lessons. And it's something that, once again, we didn't have back in our day. If you said to your school teacher, hey, I want to do esports, I want to play, back in the day, CSGO or Call of Duty for my school, they'd be like, that's just a waste of time. And I think that gets me so excited for the future of esports in South Africa, as we are entering that phase now where from a young age, kids are being introduced into esports and learning the ins and outs mechanics, and then most importantly, being part of a team. A team is usually greater than the sum of its parts. 5 individual mechanical perfect players. We've seen it so many times in other games and tournaments. You'll have the 5 best names. We've talked about Leviosa, for example. They have these names, but they're not known as a team, right? And that is where it is. We know of Goliath. We don't know the names that well, but we know Goliath because they as a team have been performing phenomenally. And the sooner we can hopefully just drill that into the kids. I don't know how. You ask me how, I don't know the answer. But that is the future we have to work towards, and I think we're taking steps in that direction. And I can't wait for the flowers to bloom of the seeds that are being sown right now. Yeah.
Fortunately for all of us, all the organizations involved, whether it be ACGR who are hosting this tournament, whether it be Omnius, Nixa, Goliath, Leviosa, all of them are owned, managed by former gamers, people who have been through things before. They've seen the mistakes they've made. They understand that to go into the future, the path cannot be what it was in the past. So I have also good optimism and good faith that we are in good hands, not just in Valorant, South Africa, but just in general in esports within this nation. Of course, that does bring us to the end of this segment, because what we really want to see, we want to see some Val ZA. We want to see the Carry First Val ZA Cup, and that is going to be coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. So make sure that you are here to join us to witness that action. We kick off with the top seed Nixa versus Omnius Gaming, but as my panel has discussed, there is no such thing as an easy matchup in the top 4 of the Carry First Val ZA tournament. Until tomorrow, y'all, we will see you in the morning. And remember, while you are here, so that we get the 75K or the extra 25K on the prize pool. And make sure that you are here to join us. Myself, Sneh, join Daniel. We've got Mr. Skara, we've got Nauri, and we've got Tendo. Tomorrow, we've got some Valorant, so we'll see you then. From myself and the ACGL crew, good night. We'll see you for some Val in the morning. Ba, 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 ba.